The first half of this Supergirl review will be spoiler-free. The second half will contain spoilers for the film and its source material, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, written by Tom King and beautifully illustrated by Bilkis Evely. You should absolutely read that miniseries, by the way, because it's only 8 issues long, and it's the best introduction to Supergirl in modern times. Anyways, onto the video. I have many thoughts about Supergirl 2026, and honestly, not all of them are good. Don't get me wrong, there is plenty to love here, but Supergirl is one of my favorite DC characters, and I am very particular with stories that feature her. Millie Alcock's portrayal of Supergirl is awesome, and it's a testament to her performance that I consider it one of the film's greatest flaws, that she doesn't get enough time to shine. Wait, a Supergirl movie that doesn't focus on Supergirl? What do I mean about that? Well, you'll find out soon enough, so grab yourself a snack and a glass of orange juice and try not to reach through the screen, cause here we go! I promise I'm never gonna do that voice again. Throughout this review, I will be referring to the movie as Supergirl and the main character as Kara. This is solely for my own benefit because I'm an idiot who gets confused easily. The basic premise of Supergirl follows Kara Zor-El on a cosmic bar crawl for her birthday week, eventually landing on a planet with a red sun. This is because she can only get drunk on planets where her powers are nullified. On this planet, she meets Rufy, a young girl on a vengeance quest against an infamous brigand named Krem of the Yellow Hills. Rufy attempts to recruit Kara to her cause, but in the midst of arguing, Krem steals Kara's ship and shoots Krypto with a poison dart. With only 3 days to save her dog, Kara and Rufy must track down Krem through some of the galaxy's worst hives of scum and villainy. The plot of the film is okay. It doesn't follow Woman of Tomorrow one-to-one because that's not really practical. Comic book Kara exists in a universe where she's had years of experience as a hero, whilst the film version is kinda new to this whole cape gig. That also means this version of Kara is far more reckless and emotionally unstable, even by the typical standards of the character. I also don't want to make the mistake of comparing this film too much to Woman of Tomorrow despite being an adaptation. After all, adaptations should be allowed to stand on their own merit, and I reminded myself of that throughout the film. For the most part, Supergirl does a fantastic job of adapting Kara to the big screen, thanks to a powerhouse performance by Millie Alcock. Millie got the mannerisms of a jaded Kara Zor-El immaculately. She's a total girl failure, blessed with the powers that do nothing to make the pain she feels inside go away. I love how her apathy extends to her body language and fighting style. Where Clark fights with intention and alertness, Kara fights more like a berserker, tanking hits and paying them back tenfold. This goes a long way in explaining how she gets beat up throughout the entire film. Because this Kara truly doesn't seem to care that much about her well-being. Sure, she'll do the bare minimum to survive, but she's so nonchalant about life-threatening scenarios. The only time she shows real fear in this film is when innocent people get caught in the crossfire. I also love how they adapt her backstory for a new audience. As Kara said, Krypton didn't die in a day. The gods are not that kind. I've mentioned it in other videos, but I'll reiterate the core difference between Kara Zor-El and Kal-El. Kal-El left Krypton as a baby and grew up on Earth with a loving family and eventually made many friends despite a yearning for his alien origins. Meanwhile, Kara lived on Krypton all her life, seeing the friends and family she loved die one by one. She left Krypton as a young adult, her memories of an extinct culture making it difficult for her to connect with new people. In essence, Kal-El mourns the home he never knew, but Kara mourns the home she's always known. The writing for Kara in this film portrays that perfectly. Kara is still not, and perhaps might never, move on from the loss of her home planet. Millie manages to showcase the funny, dark, and kind person that is Kara Zor-El, and for that alone, the film gets a gold star. And it's not the only powerhouse performance either. Jason Momoa as Lobo is legitimately Ron Perlman as Hellboy levels of perfect casting. The fact that Zack Snyder, well-known edgelord extraordinaire and lover of muscles, saw this long-haired sexy barbarian of a man and made him the fish guy will always be a mystery to me. Like, seriously? Momoa brings an effortless level of cool to Lobo that is so necessary for such an over-the-top character. The sheer levels of not giving a fuck he radiates throughout the film is hilarious. He literally feels like a force of nature that Kara and Rufy just accidentally bump into. And that's exactly what he is. Perhaps most surprisingly, he also plays an important role in the themes of the story, but we'll get to that more in the spoiler section. Needless to say, Momoa is great as Lobo, and I cannot wait to see him in other films. And last, but certainly not least in the performances, is Eve Ridley as Rufy. She practically jumps out of the comic and onto the screen, capturing the character's pompously posh prose, lack of self-preservation, and hunger for vengeance. While there were times where I felt she was a little bit stupider than her book counterpart, it's all valid given her extreme circumstances. Rufy adds a much-needed perspective to the film for showcasing how Kara is perceived by those around her. She also acts as Kara's moral anchor, keeping the Kryptonian Crash-Out from getting too lost in her own head. She's naive, but in a way that's almost similar to how Clark is naive. Even her sense of justice, though fueled by murder, is driven with noble intentions. Overall, the protagonists are fantastic, and their dynamic is the best part of the film. Now that I've glazed the movie an appropriate amount, it's time to get into some of the stuff I didn't like, and I'm going to start with the biggest one. The villains. Krem of the Yellow Field and his band of brigands are so fucking boring, and they take up way too much screen time. It's certainly not for a lack of evil on their part. Just like in Woman of Tomorrow, they are vile criminals who kill and kidnap with no remorse, and that brutality is why they even pose a threat to Kara. Unfortunately, their brand of one-dimensional evil is dreadfully dull. They all look like background extras in Guardians of the Galaxy or Star Wars, and not the cool ones either. No, I'm talking some Feng Do type jobbers. Worst of them all is Krem himself, whose redesign just screams try-hard. The metal beads, the red eyes, the BDSM barbarian getup does not inspire fear. Basically, they're Mad Max villains minus the charm. This would be fine if they existed as fodder for Kara and Lobo to slaughter, but they get so much more screen time than they deserve. Krem's evil monologues are especially droll. It genuinely felt like my Supergirl movie suddenly got interrupted by Thor the Dark World. Thor the Dark World. Sister's gonna kill me for this. For the Dark World. Thor the Dark World. The boring elf one. Speaking of himbo, oh my god, Chris Hemsworth as Dementis would have unironically been a better match for the Krem of the comics than this bald fraud. I will once again elaborate on that in the spoiler section, but, you know, it's something to think about. By the way, no shade to the actor for Krem here, he did the best with what he got, but what he got was just really, really bad. Like, it really dragged the movie down for me. And unfortunately, that lack of dimension doesn't stop with the villains. Anybody outside of the main trio are woefully uninteresting. It makes every minute away from the trio feel like an eternity. Despite being one of the shorter superhero films in recent memory, Supergirl still feels like a drag, especially in the middle act. Thankfully, it all comes together by the third act, and paired with how awesome Supergirl, Lobo, and Rufy are, it's enough for me to recommend watching Supergirl in theaters. If only because I really want to see more of these characters in the future, and I just know those pale, pulsating masses of pallid flesh at Warner Brothers who call themselves executives are looking for any excuse to cancel another superhero universe. That's where I'm ending the spoiler-free section of my Supergirl review. Once the best version of Kara leaves the screen, we will be talking spoilers, so bask in her glory until it's time to talk spoilers. Alright, that's enough Kara for you. Spoiler time! Hey, remember when I said I would let this movie stand on its own merits as an adaptation? I'm about to not let it stand on its own merits as an adaptation, but let me explain why. If an adaptation is good, then I can excuse the lack of glup shitos or the absence of certain story beats, especially if it's a film. I understand that it would be unreasonable for a sub-2-hour movie like Supergirl to cover 8 issues of Tom King's yapping. Lord knows that Wonder Woman run had too much yapping. But if the adaptation is bad, then comparing it to the source material is inevitable, especially when you make changes. As I mentioned, the lack of compelling villains is what ultimately drags Supergirl down hard. What made Woman of Tomorrow such a compelling read is seeing how Supergirl's kindness gets pushed to the limit by one man, who isn't even particularly special or unique in his evil, especially in the DC universe. Seriously, just look at Gotham and there's probably like 5 goons who are more evil than Krem is. Comic Krem isn't even the leader of the brigands, he's just some guy who joined the gang to continue his sadism. And this is important to bring up because it's related to one of the most disagreeable changes for me, and that's Rufy's backstory. I hate to say it, but the murder of Rufy's family in the film borders on comical. Her brother jumping out of nowhere and suddenly getting axed, then her parents getting wiped out for no real reason. I don't know, it kind of made me chuckle in the theater, and maybe that just means I watched too many Friday the 13th movies. Who knows? All this to say, the impact of Rufy's family's death doesn't really hit. It's very cliche to have an orphan who's looking to avenge their parents, right? Because ultimately, the goal there is obvious. They don't have any family left behind, so vengeance is all they have to live for. The whole family getting murdered robs us of a very important aspect of comic Rufy's character. In the comics, Rufy isn't orphaned. Her mother and brothers are alive. She still has concrete reasons to live the life of a normal girl because the system is there for her to do so. She's hardly the first girl to have a murdered father, especially on this harsh planet, and she won't be the last. But it was Rufy's choice to leave that comfort that informs her character's sense of justice. She's very unlike Kara and Kal-El in that regard. Neither of the Kryptonians had a choice. It was either they left Krypton or they died. Rufy didn't have to leave her family. She could have lived her life as a simple farm girl, married a simple farm boy, and start a family of her own. Maybe even name a son after her father to keep his legacy alive. But Rufy chose violence. She chose the path of dark justice to stop a man from leaving countless daughters without their fathers. That drive to pursue vengeance despite a life of comfort is what makes Rufy such an interesting character to me, and why she's such a great foil for Kara. It's a simple change in body count, and yet it matters so much. It's like how Absolute Batman still has a mom, or how MCU Spider-Man truly has no Aunt May. The ones who love you will make you who you are. The direction that the film takes, which is a cliché orphan story, makes Rufy less interesting as a result. It's not that it can't be compelling, but the film doesn't really do a lot with that premise. Especially because by the ending, she just stays with her aunt anyway, so I don't know, it just feels like I really like the more nuanced portrayal in the comics. But besides that, Rufy's actually a pretty great adaptation of the character. Especially when compared to how butchered Krem was in the film. I talked about it a little in the spoiler-free section, but it's so bad. Comic Krem of the Yellow Fields is not some infamous leader, but an assassin of the king's court. He goes around making jokes at the royal family's expense in hovels and rundown bars, seeing who laughs at the monarchy. Those who do unknowingly laugh themselves into an early grave. What makes Krem's murder of Rufy's father so unique is that Rufy's father did not laugh at the jokes. He's actually a staunch royalist, and even told Krem off for such treasonous talk. In the comics, he dies not for disloyalty, but because Krem couldn't stand the fact that a dirt farmer thought himself a better man than a king's assassin. It's a level of such petty evil that hits so much harder than the wanton brutality of the film version. In the film, Krem is portrayed as a generic warlord, saying lines so cliché I feared they would kill Kara of boredom. It's the type of monologue that Chris Pratt would have interrupted with a dance number, only we don't get that respite in the movie. Frankly, if Kara started just breakdancing in the middle of a Krem monologue, it would have really raised the movie's stock by a little bit, because that's just how boring I found him. And again, if he was just a boring villain who got very minuscule screen time, he was just an excuse for the plot, that would be fine, but he gets so much screen time, and it's all really bad and boring. Honestly, Krem just gets so much more screen time than he deserves, especially when other characters could have used that time for development. Comic Krem didn't need to have all those scary anal beads on his face or a deep voice or red eyes to be intimidating. He was a cold-blooded murderer who reveled in sadism for its own sake. And what made him scary is that he was just some guy with a little bit of charisma, a lot of malice, and a hell of a lot of luck. Kind of like Dementus in Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. This was a man who reveled in being utter garbage. He had no shame, no morals, nothing. He lived every moment purely for his own satisfaction. He could be a sniveling coward one minute and then completely smug and murderous in the next. That's what I would have loved to see for Krem in this film. That said, not all the changes to the comic were bad. I actually loved the addition of Lobo. In fact, it's technically true to the source material because Woman of Tomorrow was actually pitched as a Lobo Supergirl story first by Tom King, before editors shot the idea down. You can actually see how Lobo would have fit into the story perfectly. Besides looking totally badass, Lobo basically acts as the devil on Rufy's shoulder. Kara constantly protects Ruthie and stops her from killing Krem, knowing what murder might do to her soul. Meanwhile, while imprisoned on the brigand's ship, Lobo lets Ruthie fend for herself, cheering on her violent escape and offering his services to help her vengeance quest, which he ultimately honors by dropping Krem within Ruthie's reach. Lobo is pure true neutral, working for the highest bidder and following a code only he can understand. He certainly enjoys his career, but he also doesn't kill for his own sake. He likes having purpose, and that's why he ultimately respects Ruthie's tenacity. He encourages that dark part in Ruthie's soul hungry for vengeance. And without Kara, Ruthie gets dangerously close to doing so. But in the end, Kara convinces her to stop, and in a way that beautifully captures the spirit of the comic's original ending. The roles may be flipped, but the theme remains the same. Ruthie's revenge isn't in killing Krem, but by living a life never thinking of him again. I'm certain there's a lot of eye rolls about the whole "you'll just be like him" trope, but the movie does subvert it in the most based way possible. When Kara sends Ruthie away, Krem starts another dull monologue about how he'll never change and he'll never stop, and oh my god, he just got stabbed, holy shit. Kara straight up puts a sword through his gut, then through his throat. No, I don't have to save you loopholes here. Kara gets up close and makes it very clear to Krem that it's personal. I'm not gonna lie, I may have said based a bit too loudly at the theater when this happened, but I'm sure Lobo would have approved. But that murder doesn't make Kara the devil. On the contrary, it's a great summation of how she differs from Kal-El. If Superman is a guardian angel, then Supergirl is an avenging angel. She doesn't kill with reckless abandon like Lobo, still holding on to what her parents and cousin fought her. At the same time, the fate of Krypton, destroyed by a society too proud to notice the sickness beneath their feet, made Kara realize the importance of immediate action. By killing Krem, Kara stops another girl from being orphaned. By killing one man, they save every person he meant to kill. Kara and Hawkgirl would get along swimmingly, I just know it. But like she said, murder changes you fundamentally. When you start seeing death as a solution, it gets easier and easier to justify it as the only solution. That's why I loved Kara's choice towards the end to stay with Kal. She knows that the only thing stopping her from being a ruthless nihilist like Lobo is the people and dog that she cares about. Overall, the third act does a lot to tie the movie together for me. If it wasn't for that, I would have thought Supergirl was on the level of a mid-tier MCU film, with a few bright moments padded by long stretches of boredom. But thankfully, Supergirl has enough bright moments to make it a solid follow-up to Superman. This is just the beginning of her story in the Gunverse, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Thank you so much for watching my review, and also thank you to all my new subscribers. Sometimes I fear I've turned into a Supergirl channel, but hey, that's not the worst thing to go viral for. I'm still doing my weekly shorts reviews of my adventures with Superman Season 3, which will all lead up to another video essay once the season concludes. I'll probably make the video essay about Jimmy, but if I'm gonna be real with you, it's just gonna be another stuff video about Kara again. In non-Superman stuff, I'll be uploading my review of Deltarune Chapter 5 very soon, as well as my breakdown of Until Then's latest DLC in July or August. It depends on when I can get an interview lined up. Finally, I'm working on a script for a Silent Hill F video essay, which is set to be my longest video yet, so that'll be a fun recording session. Anyways, that's it for me, and if you like this video, then I like you very much. Platonically now, don't get too excited. See you next time!